So you can't draw into a second talents if you're running it at 1. Hello, and oh my gosh, there's a huge deck building mistake that we have to stop doing. Absolutely have to stop, because look at this. This is a sample hand that I've seen people pulled it up from some kind of Reddit thread, and the problem is, look at that. They're running triple tactics, talent, and thrust at 3 each, and then they wonder why they're breaking so much. Well, we're going to go definitely into the math of this and why it's such a bad idea. We're going to go into who and why they're running it, and then we're going to go into the proper ratios of what we should run and how it should be ran, the correct mathematical ratios. Then we're going to go into the exceptions to the rule, because people are going to be like, oh, Jesse, they're going to type in the comments, you forgot about my fluffy fluff deck that can run it at that 3 and 3 because of so on and so forth. We're going to go over your exceptions. Don't worry, calm down. And then finally, we're going to go into the case studies of why and some actual real life examples of using it and putting it into action. So that's a lot of fun stuff, and I can't wait to show you. But let's dive right into the math. We're going to go into some very simple math, right? Because we can either run cards at 3, 2, or 1, right? When we run it at 3, it's called a playset. And here's the math on that, right? If we're running 3 copies of a card, to see 1 out of the 3 copies of a card, if we're in a 40 card deck, it's a 30% chance to see it. Now, to see 2 out of the 3 cards, it's a 3.4% chance. And to see and draw all 3 of the cards, if you're running 3, a full playset, you have only a 0.1%. So a lot of people are probably like, oh man, I see those all the time, the most unlucky guy in the world. Well, yeah, it happens. 0.1% does happen. Altogether, you have about a 33% chance, right, if you add them all up, to see at least 1 copy of something if you're running at 3. Now, what if we run it at 2? Well, to see 1 of your 2 copies, you have a 22.44% chance to see it. And to see both copies, if you're running it at 2, you have a 1.28% chance. Finally, if you're running something at 1 copy, you have a 12.5% chance to see it. Now, again, this is for a 40 card deck. The math does change if we're running a 60 card deck. So let me just put the math up here real quick, and you can see how the math changes there. Very, very interesting. Look at that. Only a 0.03 chance to see all 3 copies if you're playing a 60 card deck. Kind of insane. Anyways, so I'm gonna leave that up there if anybody likes to study that math. But we're gonna go into something more interesting, because I got a really big number, and this is gonna tie it all together. 57.7. What is that? What was that number? What's the significance of that number? That's the odds of seeing at least 1 of these copies, right? Talents or thrust in your hand, if you're running both of them at the maximum playsets. You're running both of them at 3 each. And this doesn't have to just be just talents or thrust, by the way. It could just be any 2 cards, right? If you need a certain 2 cards or whatever, and you want to see 1 of them, it's 57.7% chance. But what does that mean in the context of thrust and talents? Well, it means the following. It means that we're turning our 5 card hand into 4 card hands in more than half of our opening games. And the reason why is because these cards are bricks until certain conditions are met. And we're going to go over those conditions. But before I do that, I really want to touch upon who's running these cards and why, right? As you can see here, I got this data from Master Duel Meta. These are submitted deck lists of what people are running, usually high-ranked, diamond and above, and tournament decks. These are who's running talents at the various different numbers. So for example, just real quick, if we want to make it nice and easy here, I'm going to go and look at tier, right? Tier elements. They're running talents at 3 and 19% of the decks. They're running it at 2 and 31% of the decks, and they're running it at 1 and 25% of the decks. And then even 25% of the decks aren't running it at all, right? So very, very interesting that. And you'll notice that I'm covering one of the slots, and that's going to be a mystery that I'm going to tell you and solve in about a second, but I kind of want to hide it for now. But maybe with someone with a very astute eye, no, it's not Gimmick Puppet. That was just very clever editing of me. I really just changed the editing real quick, because now this is thrust you're looking at. You're looking at the thrust numbers, right? This is who's running thrust. But I'm also covering the same deck again, because I want to talk about that in a second. But just very interesting to know, more people tend to run thrust as a target than talents. And I think that's a great choice, because thrust can always get a talent anyways. So you do want to have more thrust generally than talents. But again, we'll go into the proper ratios and the exceptions after that. Now, What was that mystery card? Well, someone that probably paused the video at the right spot would couldn't know the answers right now, but I'm just going to tell you right now, it was Heroes. And the reason why is because I think it's very interesting. You can see what they're running for the talent and thrust numbers, and Heroes is a very diverse deck, right? You can run it at 3, 2, 1, or even 0. You can see how diverse it is there. You could run a 40 card deck, a 60 card deck, but more importantly, Heroes are a deck that's used by more newer players, and it's also used by very, very strong veteran players too alike. So you can see how the data skews wildly. But what's deadly is the 8 in that 8%. There's some people running in that 3 and 3, and we don't want to do that. In fact, we really don't want to do that. I'm going to go into the proper ratios. But before I even do that, there's something I noticed that I didn't even do. I didn't even explain what made talent so strong in the first place, right? Or already kind of deep into the video. And I couldn't wait to talk about the numbers. I'm so sorry. I love talking about numbers, so I had to talk about that first. But let's talk about what the actual card does and why it's so strong and why people want to play it at 3. And why maybe we shouldn't do that, right? And play talent and thrust at 3 each, right? 6 copies. Again, here's why. If your opponent has activated a monster effect during the main phase of this turn, activate one of these effects, right? So they have to do something in the main phase. So like they have to activate in Master Duel like a Max C in the main phase, but normally they won't do that. They'll probably, if they're smart, they'll do in the standby phase. Nobody's playing Gamma right now anyways, it's that one. Or, right, like you need to hope that they ash something. So you really need to start doing plays to get advantage out of it. Anyways, but it's got 3 deadly effects here, and you'll notice the 3 effects that it has here go with these cards were all banned at one point. Pot of Greed and Forceful Sentry still are banned, but Change of Heart, funny enough, unlimited. So maybe these 2 are soon to follow? No, probably not. But here's what they do. You could do one of these effects if a card was activated, a monster effect, your opponent activated. You could, in the main phase, draw 2 cards, take control, that's the Pot of Greed effect, take control of one monster your opponent controls until the end phase. That's the Change of Heart effect. Or look at your opponent's hand, choose 1 card from it to shuffle into the deck. That's the Forceful Sentry effect. You'll notice that it's the same thing, just different, a little bit different wording because of problem-solving card text. And we can only activate one of those per turn. So very, very interesting there. Now, what about talents? Talents is very interesting too. I'm sorry, talent. Thrust. Thrust. What's so crazy about thrust, right? If your opponent has activated a monster effect, so similar condition as the talents, right? Except it's just during this turn. It doesn't have to be during the main phase, so it's a little bit more forgiving there. You could set the normal trap directly from your deck, right? And by the way, a normal spell or trap, by the way, talents is a normal spell, so you can set that. Or accept thrust, or if your opponent controls a monster, add it to your hand instead. The set card can't be activated, but if you add it to your hand because they control a monster, it could be activated. So really, really cool there. Very, very strong because that could add you, it could add you talents. It could add you something like a Regeki or a Harpy Feather Duster. It could add you something like a Change of Heart, a Monster Reborn. A lot of really good normal spells and traps, Infinite Impermanence. Sometimes if they don't control a monster, I'll just set Infinite Impermanence. I'll use it next turn, right? Or Daruma Karma Cannon is a great choice I love to do too as well. So with that said, what are the correct ratios to run? And notice there's an asterisk. Notice there's an asterisk for correct ratios because, again, we're going to go over the exceptions. Somebody be like, no, these ratios don't work for me because of blah, 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 blah. Oh, and don't worry about that because we're going to go into the exceptions. But first, the correct ratios is to only run 1 talent in a 40-card deck. Why? Well, because, and 2 thrusts, by the way. We're going to go run 1 talent, 2 thrusts. That's the correct ratios to run. And I'm going to dive into the math and why we should do that. So why are we running 1 talent? Well, because a talent is a 12.5% chance to open talents, right? So it's not really going to brick us. And if it does, we know that the other 4 cards are going to be different cards because we're not running dupes of talents. So we're not really going to clog ourselves that way, right? Because the worst thing you could do is see 2 or 3 talents in your hands. Now, I know we only had a 0.01% chance to see the 3 talents, but that is possible. And that's just a good idea just keep in mind. And then also, if you run 1 talent, the worst thing too is if you resolve talents to draw 2, you draw into a second talent, which always hurts if you're running 2 or more talents. So you can't draw into a second talent if you're running it at 1. And remember, we're comboing with thrust, so it's still searchable. So it's still kind of, we're keeping it at 3 because thrust can always search a talents too. So know that that one talent is really good there. Just keeping at 1 is more than enough. Now we're going to be running 2 thrusts. Again, it kind of keeps our like level of talents at 3, but we're running 2 thrusts. We're also giving ourselves a 12.5% chance to have 1 thrust, right? It's more forgiving, remember, than the talents, because the talents, something had to be activated in the main phase, while thrust is something could be activated during any phase. So a lot of times monsters will be activated, right? Like Labyrinth plays during the draw phase. A lot of people play during the draw phase. Tier will play during the draw phase. People in Master Duel activate Max C or even the Mole Charming cards during the draw phase. So it's a bit more forgiving there. There is the chance, the 1.28% chance we open both of them, right? So that's a little annoying, but that's now very significantly lower than the other alternative. So we've drastically reduced our deadly percentage to draw 2 of them. And then finally, remember, it also keeps the talents alive because we don't have to choose talents if we have thrust active, right? So thrust can also get, remember, it can get the impermanence if we want to set something, a Droma Karmic Cannon, right? Something that we might want to use next turn, like a deadly trap that's a normal trap that we want to use next turn. So we're going to use 1 talent, 2 thrusts, all right? Oh, and now we can talk about the exceptions because there are exceptions to that rule, and I realize that. One of the big exceptions are discard decks, right? Decks that can throw a card from the hand to the graveyard, right? So they can really make use of getting rid of that fodder like Pearly, Runic, and Horus, right? Those decks are notoriously known for being able to just discard a card from their hand and, get advantage that way. So with that in mind, they don't have to worry about drawing all of those bricks. And notoriously, these decks are also known for stacking their decks with like 20 plus of their discard cards too. So that's one of the exceptions. Another exception is 1-card combo decks that have relevant spells that are normal spells. So not something like Sword Soul. I want to make it clear because someone's like, no, Sword Soul is like a 2-card combo deck, right? So imagine you have the talents, like 2 talents clogging your deck, and now Sword Soul needs like 2 cards. No, nothing like that. Think of something like maybe Bonfire, right? Snake Eyes that can use Bonfire, right? Because if you have just the 1 talents and thrust or 2 talents and thrust clog in your hand, the other 3 cards, you just need a 1-card combo or even a Bonfire because Bonfire can add Poplar special summons itself, blah, 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 blah. And now it's back to the races, right? Very, very interesting there. So that's a good kind of exception. So they don't have to stick to the 2-1 ratio, right? Maybe 2 talents, 2 thrusts could work for them. Again, a little bit different. They get the exception. A going second deck has the exception. Why? Because they are running now, going second, they get to see 6 cards instead of 2, and they're running like different stuff. They're playing like a different style, kind of. They're guaranteed to see more monsters on field, right? Because there's already a board set up. So they're more likely also than that talents and thrust to resolve. Because sometimes you don't have nothing to get them to get anything going. While on the other hand, now going second, you have more cards in your hand, and the opponent has like a field set up with more than likely monsters that are going to activate to turn talents live. And then, you can get your various cards, and you could steal monsters, whatever you want to do. Very, very potent for go second deck. So again, they might want to play more than the sample ratios I give. And also 50 card plus decks, right? These big deep dive decks. Because remember when I showed the math before, right? So think of a deck like Terelements. When I was showing the math on the 60 card deck, you had a less chance to draw those. Therefore, you're isolating your bricks and your garnets. And in this case, you're going to draw less talents and thrusts if you have more of them in your deck, simply because there's just more quantity cards there. So that's another exception there. And 2 more exceptions, 10 and Gen type decks. What do I mean by that? Well, decks that summon cards to your opponent's side. Particularly Ken again is more effective too, because not only will they summon the monsters to the other side, but it will activate the effect, turning on thrusts and talents right then and there. And if they use like Effect Veiler, or if they use Ash to try to stop it, well, great, they still turned on your talents and thrust. So great to use there. Or even something like Black Garden could put a monster, it could put something on the other side, but you still have to make them use an effect. So really more for Ken and Gen. And also I put your comments because again, maybe I forgot something. And again, people are always like, oh, Jesse, you forgot about my fluffy fluff deck. You can run it at 3 and 3 because it has the power to vaporize my hand and draw 16 cards. Yeah, leave it in the comments below because people always are like, oh man, this isn't a deck building mistake because you forgot my deck, right? My deck. And that's why I didn't make the title huge deck building mistake unless you're playing Pearly, Blind Second Runic, Ken and Gen, all this kind of crazy stuff, because then the title would have looked like that. So keep in mind, it is a huge deck building mistake normally if you're running 3 and 3 and you're not running those kinds of exceptions. Very, very important to know. But now let's get into the case studies. And I just realized now I'm wearing a big old Dr. Pepper shirt. This is not an ad, by the way. This is not an ad. I just love Dr. Pepper. So I just want to point that out. And by the way, if you like kind of math and stuff like this, like and subscribe. Give us a like and subscribe. Join our Discord. Really, really cool. We have a lot of good stuff. I love to analyze the math of your decks. We have a part where in our Discord where you could submit your own decks. And our team, we like to analyze it. We're a bunch of geeky nerds, really. We love to go into the math and stuff. So come submit your deck in our Discord. Let's analyze it and see how good it is or not. And yeah, let's jump into the case studies here because we got a good one. And again, like and subscribe if you like math. All right, what do we got here? That guy's going first. All right. So yeah, this deck I literally just cooked up in about 2 minutes. It's a going second pile deck. And again, we have all the good cards that Triple Tactics Talent and Triple Tactics Thrust can go with. This is taking place during the Theme Chronicle event, because again, it's just something I cooked up. This is just a proof of concept a little bit, you know. So, you know, we have the Ken and Gen type decks, a lot of the Go Second type decks. This is a 40 card deck. I will interrupt them here when they do the Soul Overeating Raptor thing, Dinosaur, as that looks like a good time to negate them, and they still can go into like a Synchro 10 or do something here. I'm not sure what kind of end board that he's going to make with the Frostosaurus, especially since I negated him, but it looks like he's going to take the 2 6s and overlay them into an Xyz summon and get some kind of Xyz negate here. That's going to negate special summoning, but it's fine. And off the top, of course, this is a Triple Tactics talent video. Here we go. We're going to use Ultimate Slayer. Ultimate Slayer, of course, very, very good at getting rid of a card. We're trying to force, see, look, I can't even force him to do anything with Triple Tactics Talent. So my Triple Tactics Talent isn't even live. Look at me trying to get everything possible to make Triple Tactics Talent live. Finally, I had a Ken to make again appear on the other side to do an effect, but he wastes his Ash Blossom because now that'll just turn on my Talents anyways. And you can see here that now Talents is live. Talents, such a strong card, and this is just the opening video because this is what I wanted to show you. Look at that. As soon as he saw Talents, he ran away. Like, oh, he scurried away. I got to get out of here, man. He's doing Talents on me. Got to get out. So see, that's why that's the first video. Let's jump into the next one. All right. This guy's going first again. You know, I've got a blind second deck anyways. I don't mind going second. Here we go. Look at this. You can see here clearly. Oh, very, very interesting. 2 things real quick. So first thing to notice, look at this. I drew the Talents and the Thrust. If you had this going first, like this right here, this would have been a brick hand, you know what I'm saying? But obviously I'm building going second, so Ultimate Slayer is taking up some spot. I've got some going second cards, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you'd only have 3 cards to work with, and that's devastating. Anyways, Gen X is a card, a deck, that likes to link climb and go into this little link guy right here, the link 1. By stopping me from getting the link 1, that completely ends his turn. That's why I decided to Ghost Ogre it. But funny enough, I was actually considering not ogreing it, because now if I end his turn, there's not going to be anything on the field for me to use my Thrust and Talents on anyways. So look, he's going to get his Gen X card, because that adds a Gen X card. And then look, he's got nothing on the field. And so all of this is off. Everything is off. There's literally, now I'm bricked. I should have actually let him do a little bit more. But luckily, some good deck building, or maybe a little luck, because I'm running a bunch of Ken and Gens, about 5 of them total. Well, I got 3 Gens. I'm running 2 Kens just to promote this deck list a little bit more. I draw it off the top, so some good luck there. But look, that Cannon Gen is so strong when you consider using it with triple tactics talent, triple tactics thrust would have turned them both on, and now I would have had a card on the field. I would have had able to use tactics, would have been able to pull something out of his hand that I didn't like, would have been able to do a bunch of stuff, look at stuff, add stuff, put my imperm down, and yeah, that's why he resigned. All right, that guy's going first. Here we go. I've got 2 Cannon Gens in my hand, an Alpha Master of Beasts, a great going second card also, and then a triple tactics thrust. Also, I love Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. It's one of my favorite hand traps, probably, in my opinion, better than Ash Blossom currently in this current format. I have to put the asterisk there because people are like, what? Droll is better, or Ash is better, or whatever, or Token Collector's better. I don't know. My favorite is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit because, look, I could just explode that. Now he's forced to fuse with whatever he's got in his hand. This guy is a Dragon Maid player here. So going right into Show. Show is an Omni Negate, I believe. When your opponent activates a card effect, yeah, you can negate the activation, and then you get to summon a card off the top. Now, Show's going to do that there during the standby phase. That does one thing. That turns on my thrust, but not my talent. Remember, that's very interesting that because he's not doing anything in the main phase right now, my thrust is live, but my talent is not. That's why that's very, very important to distinguish the difference, and you can see there how the thrust is better. Anyways, I'm going to start with the baiting out of the thrust. Of course, now he's using Ash Blossom. That's going to make my talents live. So now my talents live, but he's still got that Omni Negate, so I got to kind of force that out. Let me do a little Gen action here, and of course he falls for the bait. Oh yes, so tricky, because now I'm being slicky. He falls for the bait, destroys that, gets this card. Now I'm going to bring that back to the hand because that's pretty cool. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look, take a little peek, a little gander at what he's got, right? Because I've got an Alpha Master of Beasts. Sure, I could draw 2, but I'm going to go second deck, and he doesn't really have that great a board anyways, so there's nothing I need to really dismantle. So everything I need to dismantle is in his hand. So I'm looking at his hand, and this card looks like it's the deadliest because it can special summon something from the graveyard, so let's shuffle that bad boy right in there. And I can special summon the Alpha right back because he could special summon himself, bring something back, like a kaiju. I have some kaijus in here. A Santa Claus, actually, in this deck because I couldn't run kaijus in the Theme Chronicle, but Alpha goes great with kaijus. You could bring those back to the hand. They can also bring the Cannon Gens back to the head. Very, very strong with that. So this guy just had to pass. He completely whiffed. Great for me because now I can start using the Cannon Gen combo. Gen's going to make him discard a card. And now I'll use Alpha Master of Beasts, bring those 2 guys, make a clear shot too. I do want to bring Alpha back into my hand to protect him here because I have a infinite impermanence. Alpha Master of Beasts will be able to, I don't want to just leave him vulnerable out there for whatever kind of card he's going to draw to destroy him or negate him and stuff like that. So I'm going to bring back all my cards, protect my hand because I don't think that a simple whatever 1 card off the top Dragon Maid is going to be able to finish me off, and it's not. So bring everything back. The Cannon Gen have to come back, by the way, if you do go to the battlefield. A useless Nibiru, actually. And he's got a... I'm doing another effect with Gen here. Gonna get a Ken. He's gonna call it by the Grave It. Okay, great. Wasting his cards because, yeah, we're in a bit of a slobber knocker here, but I have a slow chokehold on him. I'm like slowly, I'm like a viper, slowly giving him the squeeze. Oh, wait, no, vipers are poisonous. I'm like an anaconda, slowly giving him just a squeeze, choking his deck out, and he can only manage to put 1 card at a time, and I don't really mind because I got a negate, and now Iris Soul off the top. Here's why I like this card, right? This card actually goes very well with Infinite Impermanence because if you negate a card on the field, you could special summon her right away, and then when she's special summoned, you're able to special summon a monster from your hand, or if he special summons a monster from the extra deck, you could destroy 2 cards. If he special summons a card from the deck, I get to draw 2 cards. Very, very strong, very, very powerful, and it combos very well with Infinite Impermanence. You can see I do have some negating effects, a lot of negates, even in my extra deck cards, so I could throw stuff with, this card will negate as well if I get rid of an XZ's card. When this card goes to the graveyard, I can negate a card on field effect. So I do have a lot of cards to facilitate this Iris Sword Soul, or I can special summon Iris Sword Soul, by the way, by sending to the graveyard with some kind of cards I have that throw stuff to the graveyard with this, because during the end phase, I can special summon a like spellcaster from my hand or deck whose attack equals its own defense, which Iris Sword Soul does. So I have a lot of little Iris here, but the focus isn't about Iris. Again, it's all about the tactics and thrust. And right now, the tactics and thrusting I'm doing is I'm thrusting my own cards back into my hand with Alpha Master of Beast. And Ken, again, putting in a lot of work. Look at that, discarding his own thrust, right? You can't beat me at thrusting. I'm the one that's thrusting, right? I'm the thrust master, 3000. Anyways, but I'm going to discard that Nibiru because it's useless. Destroy his called, a second called by the grave. He realized himself now that Ghost Ogre is so good, so that's why he's going to just banish the Ghost Ogre. And now I have him in a deadly wrestling move, because look at this. He is like, there's nothing he could do. It's kind of like if he goes to negate a card, right? Throws out a card, I negate it and put out Iris Soul. If he puts out a big body, I've got Alpha Master of Beasts. I'm slowly dwindling him with the Ken and Gen combination. And sure, I have just a random Phoenix on the board. There's really nothing this guy can do. I'm like throbbing him. I don't know how he negated it. And every time he just gets a poor trap. You know, there's really nothing he could do. And Effect Veiler is very useless for me right now, because I already got a negate. And that's another card that facilitates the Iris Soul, by the way. So anyways, I'm going to go into Nightmare Unicorn now. Again, some basic stuff. I'm going to throw that away and get rid of that card. I don't even know what it is. Don't know. Don't care. And I'm slowly killing them because that's what my deck's going to do. How I designed my deck in this Theme Chronicle. I haven't really had much issues. Had about a 65% win ratio, I would say, with this deck in Theme Chronicle. Again, I'm not going against the best of decks. But here he goes. He finally gets a little monster out. Look at that. He finally gets something. And now I negate it. And here we go. Now that he's negated, I can bring out the Iris Soul. So now if he special summons anything, does something, he does get to get a nice little bonus card here back. But at this point, it might just be too late because I have too much damage on the field for him to do anything. So, oh, there's a second off Alpha Master of Beast. I only run 2 Alpha Master of Beast because, you know, I really like my ratios being tight. And what isn't tight right now is this guy's body, because I just loosened him up with all the body blows I gave him, giving him all of these shots to the face with my monsters. And anyways, a very simple duel event, and that's why this was pretty easy, and just a little bit of theory crafting how to use the thrust and talents a little bit. And you can see, you know, there's not really much to showcase. These were the matches I was getting with thrust and talents with both of them in. And you can see when I did draw them, even it was a pain to get them out to use them for their full effect. So even though they're very powerful cards, sometimes they're not the best cards. But still, though, we don't want to run 3 and 3. I'll show you the deck list I ran right now. Now, what kind of deck was I running there, right? It was an absolutely awful deck, by the way. This was for the Theme Chronicle. Right, it was the Theme Chronicle. If you run this deck in ladder, you could probably get to Diamond with it. I don't think you'll be getting to Masters with this deck, but it is very interesting to know. I used it for the Theme Chronicle, and I completed it. Here's what I was running. I did end up getting 2 of these Kens, 3 Gens. I switched it for the Metal Tronus there, so just something to know. I like to run, you know, a lot of diverse hand traps. Notice that I don't like to run a lot of playsets. I don't run a lot of 3s of, because I really do hate drawing 2 of a card, right? I do like to keep my decks very unique and playsets to a minimum. So very, very potent go blind second deck that I have here. You can see here my extra deck is really formulated for Ultimate Slayer there, because really there's no real use to it. I do have a little bit of combo there for that, because like I said, this is graveyard, that. If I steal a card with Change of Heart, by the way, it counts as a level 8, so I can go into the Zombie Vampire guy pretty easy. There's a little combo for Maximus in here, right? If I summon this guy right here, I could turn him into Almirage, who Almirage turns into Gardna, and then Gardna is Almirage in the graveyard, so now my Maximus is active. Or if it's just I normal summon something, turn 2, I can get the Ventriloquist out. Ventriloquist turns into Gardna. So I had a lot of like different random stuff going on here, but it wasn't any. There was a bit of thought into it, but this deck honestly took me probably 2 minutes to make. I was just go second cards. I can really make that decks like that. It was enough to complete and probably get about a 65% win ratio in the Theme Chronicle. Nothing crazy, but again, pretty good. If you do want to run this in ladder, probably switch out the Santa Clauses with actual kaijus. They were banned for the event. And that's probably, you know, get put in maxis, of course, instead of these guys, because maxis are more versatile and able to always be on, so you could just have maxis instead of that. So just switch out some of the cards that were banned from the Theme Chronicle and just put in the better versions of themselves. The go second cards like Pankratops and Alpha Master of Beats really did work in a lot of these decks. Hand traps were good all at one, just unique. Probably could take out Ghost Ogre and Nibiru though, because sometimes they might turn off your your other hand traps. So there was a little conflicting stuff going on there. Again, we had the Imperm and the Karma Cannon for the thrust targets if they did that. So that's just interesting there. And that was my deck list. So I hope you guys like this video. And yeah, remember, I was running the exception, so that's why I was running a 3-2 package instead of a 2-1. So remember, this deck was the exception, and that's why I put the case study, because I could, you know, break the rules a little bit, and that's why you were seeing those decks, why I was seeing, and just how often I was seeing the thrusts and the talents. Anyways, hope you guys like this, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Oh, I just remembered right now. Now I remember why I wore this Dr. Pepper shirt. It's because I wanted to tell you guys are always one of a kind for watching my thing. So thanks for watching.